So I'm doing this live stream from a phone that doesn't allow me to stop the live stream. So after I stop this, it's going to keep saying that there's a live stream happening when really there's not. But I can edit it after the fact and it'll show up on my channel with those long parts cut out. Um, so yeah, I'm basically just getting this set up because later on it'll appear as a clip. It's not even really meant, I'm not even intending it to really be seen as a live stream. Um, what filter should I use? Dream, more like a nightmare. It's weird how it's like pulsating. Okay, holy crow. I have to go back. Go that way. We'll go with that one. Okay, so this is the deal. I just need to talk about, I need to get some things off my chest. Because my life is a shambles and people sit and judge me all the time, whether it be people in the family or just practically strangers or people I don't know very well. I'm always being judged and looked down upon because my life is a shambles. So it's only natural for people are judgmental by nature. So people just judge you. That's just how it goes when your life is in a shambles. I'm not really blaming them. But everyone's responsible for their own outcomes in life. Ultimately, nobody else is responsible for your well-being. Just like in the Like a Prayer song by Madonna, everyone must stand alone, ultimately. So ultimately, I am responsible for my own situation and nobody else is. And I accept that. I accept that maybe too readily sometimes because I now want to talk about, okay, that's true that I'm responsible for my own outcomes, but my family, other people, and today I'm going to be talking about my family, other people have played a big role in bringing me to this point where my life is in a shambles. And even though I'm responsible for myself and I can't really blame them, they deserve, like, ultimately, I can't blame them. Ultimately, I'm responsible for myself. I, they do deserve a portion of the blame, or just because, like, I think they deserve to have some accountability for their actions because they have done some bad things. So even though I'm ultimately the only one accountable, because I'm the only one who's going to be able to have much of an impact on my well-being at this point, like I already faced that accountability all the time, whereas my family hasn't faced any accountability for their bad actions that have been going on my whole life. So I want to talk about that. I want to talk about my sucky family and how they've played a role in bringing me to this point. Um, well, I'll just give a quick background. I don't want to dwell on the long story. So, as if it wasn't bad enough that, I had idiotic parents who were really young and unprepared for parenthood and didn't have hardly any money. And the money that they did have when I was growing up was spent partying and drinking and doing drugs. So as if that wasn't bad enough. And then they'd come home from the parties or nights out of drinking and be engaged in these huge, violent fights of my dad beating up my mom, and super traumatizing for me. And I would usually play an active role, unlike my sister. I would, usually just call the police. Usually my dad would smash the phone though in our house, so I'd have to go to a neighbor's house to call the police. So I'd like try to look for an opportunity to run out and run to the neighbors to call the police. Um, and but sometimes there's even one time I can think of when I physically put myself in between my dad and my mom so that I would take because I couldn't stand seeing him hit her. I'd rather him hit me, so I took a hit for her. And so the only black eye I ever had in my life was from my dad. He was actually intending to hit my mom, but he hit me because I positioned myself in between them. Police did come that night, and I had to be hidden away or something in a closet while the police were there because, like, my mom was afraid that if they had saw me with a black eye, I would have been apprehended. There's probably many times in my childhood when I should have been apprehended by social services, but I always dodged it, like because my dad grew up a part of his childhood in care as a youth in care, and I heard such nightmares stories, and so it was like that was seen as like the worst thing ever, and especially that I was the oldest, like I would be then responsible. I'd be responsible for the fact that my sister was now in care. Like everyone would blame me. I was the one who called the cops in the first place. So even let alone the fact that I called the police, I'm sure on more than one occasion it saved my mother's life because that's how bad my dad would beat her up. I mean, he's put her in the hospital before with a head concussion. So it was quite serious, quite traumatizing childhood that I had there. Not only that, but they were always, through my whole childhood, they showed favoritism to my sister. Um, like, you know, I never had a backpack or those little box drinks that you take to school in your lunch. Or I never had any of those kind of things to go to school with until after my sister started going to school, which by that point I was in grade four. So, at that when my sister went to school, my parents were all like, "Oh yeah, we have to like send them with backpacks and juice boxes." But when I was just going to school and it wasn't her going, it was oh well he can take his stuff in a plastic bag, can't he, and he can drink water from the fountain at school. Like I was not considered to be important enough for that, and yet ironically my mom to this day gets totally bent out of shape over the fact that um it's not even something that happened to her, over that my dad, and then amongst when he was growing up, there's stories about how his older sister was shown favoritism. um, something like she was allowed to go to the Peony when the others didn't. But okay, so my mom is bent out of shape that happened to my dad as a child, but doesn't seem to care when she did that herself to her own kids, effectively speaking. So, you know, just saying. Um, so yeah, but so as if that wasn't all bad enough, right? It was a really bad, crappy childhood, and my parents played an active role in making it that way. But as if that wasn't bad enough, I forgave them, moved on, basically tried to live a good life as an adult, and I have done for most of my adult life until things went off the rails a few years ago. Um, but so now, fast forward into 2020, and I want to talk about Christmas of 2020 because my mom is trying to change the story about what happened. So I need to get it out about what actually happened. So that was the year that people were getting vaccinated for COVID-19. That was when we were on lockdown for much of that year. That was when my husband up and left me. Like, um, yeah, I'm not sure if it was during the lockdown, but it was pretty close to around that time still. People were very scared of COVID. Like masks and all that were the norm. And so yeah, he left at end of September. And so going into that Christmas season, I was the first time single in 15 years. Like me and my husband were together for a long time. Um, and then So his family reached out to him because they knew that he was going to be lonely for Christmas and made sure that he was not alone. And he actually went to spend Christmas with his family in Edmonton. Whereas my family told me that I was not allowed to come over for Christmas because I was not vaccinated. Okay. Now, to understand something, is it's my mom and dad live downstairs of a house that the whole house is a rental, and upstairs is with my younger sister and her husband and her two kids. Okay, and then downstairs is my mom and dad. And and this house is owned by somebody in my sister's husband's family, like an in-law of my sister's. Okay, and if it wasn't for this house, like my parents would practically be homeless. Like they can't afford to live on their own. I mean, that's horrible. I mean, it's partly their fault, but it's also not entirely their fault. That's also just because of the housing crisis, which is extreme. Okay. Um, so, anyways, the reason that I was told as to why I could not come over for Christmas was because I'm not vaccinated for COVID-19. I've never been vaccinated for it to this day. And that they were all vaccinated, but not only that, all the guests that they were expected that they were possibly going to have come over that Christmas season, whether it be Christmas Day or any time during that whole holiday season, um, uh, those would be people who got vaccinated specifically so that they would have be able to come over to visit my family and my sister's kids. So that's, I guess they're mainly talking about my sister's in-laws, so my sister's husband's family. They got vaccinated so that they would be able to come over to my sister and her husband's house where my parents also live, and visit the kids, like this, like including like my sister's mother-in-law, so she wants to be able to see her grandkids and all that at Christmas time. And so they all got vaccinated, some of them against their will. Okay, some of them against their will. They didn't really, this is my understanding, they didn't really want to be vaccinated, but they did it anyways so that they would be able to come over to this house and see this family. Okay, and so that, like, I was not going to get vaccinated come hell or high water. And so I was told that the reason I couldn't come over is because I'm not vaccinated, and these other people, these other extended family members, or oh my God, these other in-laws and that who'd be coming over, that they just got vaccinated so that they could come over. So if they found out that, oh my God, well, Tommy's here and he's not vaccinated, so you're telling me like you made an exception for him, but you wouldn't for me. So I had to be vaccinated in order to come over, but he didn't. Like that was the rationale. Okay, so in order to make things even and equal amongst all the extended family members, like they weren't going to make an exception for me. Everybody had to be vaccinated. Okay, because it might put somebody out, make them feel bad if they found out. They'd feel like they got vaccinated for no reason then. Um, okay. Never mind that this is all a bunch of crock of shit. Like, it doesn't even make sense, the whole vaccine stuff. Like, I went through it with my mom so many times about how it just did not make sense. She's never been someone to trust authority ever in her whole life. Never in her whole life. But during the pandemic, she fell in love with it. Like, I remember her saying that, oh, well, I just go along with the official dictates of what they say. I'm like, really, Mom? Really? When have you ever been like that? Like, when have you ever been like that? She's never been like that. But she decided that during COVID-19 was the time that she would, first time in her life in over 50 years, that she would respect authority. Okay. um, so yeah, that's what happened. And so it was just after I was alone for the first time ever, like not even having my husband. And now I'm not allowed to come to see my family for Christmas because I'm not vaccinated and because it could put these other people out who are mainly assholes. My sister's husband's family, they're a bunch of assholes, trust me. Uh, that they wouldn't be put out. Okay. Like, what business? Why would they even need to know if I'm vaccinated or not? Like, what business would it have been of theirs to even know that, to have been put out in the first place? I'm not quite sure. Um, and so yeah, that's basically what really did my family in. And even after that, like I've seen them a handful of times, like not even a handful of times, maybe two or three times. And it was really quick because my sister is super paranoid to be around me. Like, I know when just before I came to Kamloops, I I I dropped in unannounced because would have been the only way that I could see them. And my sister was scared out of her wits to be around me, and I had to make it a real quick visit because that's how paranoid she was to be around me as an unvaccinated person. You know, like, yet I'm the only person in the family who's officially considered nuts, but I would consider her to be pretty nuts when it comes to, like, that's a form of mental illness that she should probably get anti-anxiety medication for. Like, you should get help for that because, like, her paranoia about being around unvaccinated people is not commensurate with reality. Okay, and so yeah, that's what happened, and I could get past it mainly, except for the fact that they're trying to rewrite history. And my mom is saying that, no, 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 we didn't want you to come over because we were worried about you, because that you were unvaccinated, that somehow that you would get sick from one of us, and you're unvaccinated, so we were just doing it all for your protection. Really? Really? Yeah, that's a revisionist BS story if I ever heard one. That is not at all how it went down. That is not at all how it went down. So I could move on from it and forgive them, but in order to forgive someone, they have to be sorry, right? They have to ask for forgiveness and be sorry and apologize. Well, my mom isn't ready to apologize if she's lying about what happened. Like, she's not even admitting what happened, let alone to apologize for it. So that's why it's still a sore spot in our lives, in our family. And, the last Christmas, just incidentally before this, the previous one, so Christmas of 2019, that would have been the last Christmas that I saw my family. I went there and I had just come into some money. It's all spent by now. I don't, trust me, I don't have any money now, but I had just come into some money just before that Christmas. And I had given them all $100 each in their Christmas cards, like everyone in the house. And my sister's husband could not turn away from football, which was on TV. Could not turn away from it. Was playing it loud, like so that even like we couldn't talk amongst ourselves and have a conversation without like trying to talk over the sound of the football game. That was the last time I saw my family at Christmas time. So again, my sister's husband, like so many of the problems come from my sister's husband's either her husband or his family. So in that case, it was her husband himself being an ass, not just refusing to turn down the sound of the football game while there's this family Christmas visit going on. Like, how rude is that? Like, how rude is it that you're even watching football during that, let alone that you have it blasting and blaring? Like, pretty rude. And so, yeah, that was the last time I ever saw my family at Christmas, probably for the rest of my life at this point, because I'm never going to get vaccinated and they're never going to get over their paranoia. Meanwhile, like my mom, how many times has she been vaccinated? Like 3 times. She's had COVID more than anyone I know. Like more than anyone I know. So much for your vaccine working so well. Like, I haven't had it once. I haven't had it once. And I've never been vaccinated. They've all been sicker than I've ever known them to be in the past few years, and they're all vaccinated. So let's see how it didn't really work out too well for them, did it? So yeah, I just wanted to say that. I don't really need to say anything more. But yeah, this is when your family abandons you, when you've already been left on your own from your husband, and it's over some BS reason, and when they're not even wanting to admit it, and they're trying to make up lies and excuses and rewrite what happened. Yeah, that leaves a sour taste in your mouth. It's absolutely contributed to in a huge way to my isolation and the fact that my life is in a shambles right now. Now, ultimately, I'm responsible for my own well-being. Like, I've learned that in spades in the past few years. Like, you can't count on anyone. You can't count on anyone. So not even your family, like nobody, anyone who you think you can count on, you can't really. So that's something that I know. And so I am responsible for my own well-being. And I need to get past this regardless of how they're going to react or what they're going to do. So that's up to me to work on that. But I think this is part of it, is like putting it out there and acknowledging it and saying that, well, this is what happened. This is what happened. And then now that it's been acknowledged that this is what's happened, then you can start to heal from it and move on. But as long as it's kind of being hidden away, there's no opportunity for healing. All right. That's all I have to say. Peace out. And I can't stop it from recording, just like I said at the beginning. So it'll just have to think that I'm still live streaming for a while. And I'll edit this later.